Some people say that it's excessive to consider all the possibilities, and the implications that they throw up. But I say it's like chess. You've got to consider every option. You've got to follow where they lead you, and so on. It's a bit like marshaling your pieces on a chessboard. Making a movie.
Kubrick's films, fantastic films, and when you're first becoming a film nerd, whether you consider yourself just a guy that likes films or a proper film buff who's going to stroke your chin and listen to Mark Commode and all that, either way, you watch Kubrick movies and usually you love them. Some of them you might be a bit less accessible, but generally there's something to them, even the ones that everyone doesn't respond to. Like every dude, even guys that don't really watch that many movies, loves Full Metal Jacket. I feel like he's kind of, in some ways, the quintessential young film buff director to fall in love with. Especially because, when you're young and you're that age, a lot of time when you're that into movies, you at least have, if not aspirations and intentions to become a filmmaker yourself, you at least have delusions and fantasies, when you're sitting taking a shit and you imagine you're directing a movie and you're winning the Oscars or whatever. One of the biggest pitfalls and misunderstandings about great filmmakers is a lot of time that idea of the auteur means to a lot of people complete control freak, runs everything, controls every aspect of the filmmaking. And Kubrick has this reputation pretty much like no one else. He is the personification in a lot of people's eyes of the all-controlling filmmaker, the auteur that controls every aspect of the filmmaking and everything has to come through him. And in some ways this is true. Kubrick had, even among some of the most successful filmmakers today, even then he had more control. Like someone like Spielberg, he can do anything he wants. No one's going to fuck with him. No one's going to be like, you're not allowed to make a film about this. He could theoretically probably stick his finger into every single pie, every single aspect. If he wanted to run the marketing campaign, they'd probably let him. But most don't. Most don't want to have the amount of control that Kubrick had. But one thing I think everyone gets wrong is the idea that it wasn't collaborative. If anything, it was more collaborative than most other filmmakers. He would have a say in every aspect of it, set designing. He would obviously have final say on everything. But there was a quote of him saying, a lot of it is about taste and it's about taste selection. He kind of treats it like, when people are getting married and they get to go to a tasting thing where they try out the foods that might happen. It was like that, where he would show up, he'd give a general idea of what he wants, but a lot of the time he wouldn't know what he wanted until he saw it. So he would just say no to everything. Say no to this, say no to that. Maybe give an occasional, that's looking better, or that's a bit more like what I want. But he couldn't really tell people completely what he wanted because he didn't know till he saw it. It's the same with how he would direct his actors, because he was famous for not giving direction. He would just say cut and go again. He was famous for getting up to like 90, sometimes 100 takes. A lot of the time, of nothing in particular. He apparently shot Tom Cruise in Eyes Wide Shut walking through a doorway 100 plus times. But it wasn't because he was so obsessed with getting what was his vision. It was because he didn't know what he wanted to see until he saw it. He didn't know what he wanted, but he knew what he didn't want. And he would just go through that until he got something interesting. There was a story with Alec Baldwin when he was on the set of Full Metal Jacket. I think it was the scene, where it moves into the second half of the film and Joker meets Animal Mother, played by Alec Baldwin. They kept getting this take over and over and over again. And they kept getting it again and kept going again. And eventually Alec Baldwin was just like, what does this guy want? He's not given any direction in between takes. Like, I don't know what else to do different. And he said it, and Kubrick overheard him one of the times, and he just went, how about some better acting? And apparently everyone started cracking up on set. But that was his whole approach, was he would just film until he started to, not even saw what he wanted, but something interesting started to emerge. One of the few parts of his film career where people know there was a lot of improvisation was with the drill instructor. Everyone knows he improvised all his lines. And that's kind of true, but actually kind of not true. Because what Kubrick would want would be for him to improvise lines, and they would improvise lines in rehearsals over and over and over. Then they would take the best ones and write that into a script. Then he had to follow the script exactly.
I said, you gotta be shitting me, Joker. You think you're Mickey Spillane?
That's what you think you're Mickey Spillane.
You think you're some kind of fucking writer. You gotta be shitting me, Joker. You think you're Mickey Spillane? You think you're some kind of writer?
Fucking right.
Fucking. That fucking got all.
You put it in.
You're some kind of fucking writer.
And this wasn't that uncommon for a lot of scenes and sequences in his films. Another one, for example, is in The Shining. You have Jack Nicholson's really starting to lose his marbles, starting to hallucinate, and he starts hallucinating Mr. Grady in the toilets. And you have that whole sequence where they're talking, and over the course of the conversation, Grady goes from very nice and polite to really sinister and talking really bizarrely about the fact that he had to correct his daughters and all that. Now, that sequence is brilliant, and that was filmed over something like 100 takes, and part of that was the script it started with was not what the scene ended, but over time it sort of emerged over the course of the takes. He allows a certain amount of flexibility and improvising, not just amongst dialogue, but the course of the whole scene. But that whole dynamic of him slowly revealing himself as the sinister character, that wasn't in the original script, not like that anyway. That was the general theme of the scene. They knew roughly where that was going to go, but that kind of emerged naturally over this practice of slowly taste testing different intangibles and different phrases and different things over the course of so many takes until it arrived at that. So as much as he is this all-encompassing controlling figure, he actually allowed quite a lot of freedom to the actors, and in some ways more freedom to the actors, the set designers, the cinematographers, the extras, everything. Everyone had more freedom. It just didn't mean that freedom was going to make it into the final movie. In fact, on average he got 80 takes, and it was probably less than 1% anything you did was going to make it into the movie. But you had that freedom. It wasn't a case of you must hit every mark, you must say every line of dialogue. And some directors are like that. Who's the guy that made A Few Good Men and The West Wing? Can't remember his name now, but that writer-director, if you say he'll stop you and be like, no, in the script it's huh. He will be down to the absolute minuscule, you have to say it exactly and hit it exactly like it's in his head.
You notice about films sometimes is when they follow the script so rigidly, it comes out to be translated onto the screen to be very wooden. Do you know what I mean? And with this method, it lets it naturally evolve, and it feels a lot more natural.
Where it becomes like its own living, breathing thing that emerged into the world organically, kind of like a raw original thought. You don't really construct a thought. A lot of the time it just appears to you. I mean, it's actually kind of like writing yourself, but in every aspect of the filmmaking, because if you're writing something, ideas present themselves to you. I guess you come up with them because it's in your brain, but you don't really. They just kind of appear and you taste select them. So it's kind of like that, but just on a wider, more dynamic scale involving hundreds of other people.
I guess a modern day equivalent of Kubrick, in a sort of control freak sense, Ridley Scott is quite well known for, especially on Blade Runner, doing everything. Storyboards, loads and loads of stuff on the dressing of the set. He's obsessed with it. The amount of takes and stuff, obviously it led to nearly a riot on the fucking film set of Blade Runner, because they had all those rain effects, and it was all pissing down on the crew, and it was the 100th take, and it's getting to the night time, they've been there for 30 hours and they're just getting pissed off. But he's no, again, he is a bit of a master. So
it is fascinating different people's approaches, because you think Kubrick would be the cameraman essentially. He would look through the lens of every shot. Hitchcock was famous that he would have it so perfectly planned and have his vision so laid out and have so much faith in his crew, he wouldn't even look through the camera lens.
Oh really?
He wouldn't even look at the dailies. He would just be like, nah, it's going to be good, I'll work with my editor, I know what's going to happen, my vision is going to be captured.
He's assembled the team and he knows that they're going to do a good job, so he just washes his hands of it and it allows him to relax. There's a fine line in football management about managing people. You've got to know when to put your arm around someone's shoulder. You've got to know, especially in work, do you micromanage this person or do you let them have independence and let them get on with it? It's a very fine line. Yeah. And I guess that translates to filmmaking as well. Once you build that rapport with someone, like at work, I know if someone's good, I'll be like, leave them, they'll sort it out. Do you know what I mean? So.
Yeah, well, I guess when it's this collaborative, it's not a solo art form. You're working with so many other people. So, and when you're the head honcho leading the whole thing, I guess it makes so much more sense where you can't do all the work and you wouldn't want to do all the work, or else why would you hire all these people? So it's just about creating the perfect environment for everyone to flourish together, and then ultimately serve to create your vision, or at the very least, get all the credit for it.
Do you know what kind of a camera that is? What it's called?
It's a home movie.
Now reflective.